Hey, welcome to TWIRx, This Week in Pharmacy. I am your host, Todd Urey, founder of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. I am thrilled to be here with you today. It is Friday, January 17th, and I tell you what, pharmacy, super active this week if you haven't been paying attention. And we're going to go through some news. Pretty excited about what's happening in the changes, especially the payment changes, and how the FTC has gotten majorly involved in the battle to right the ship, and what's happened with PBM reform. You hear us talking about that a lot, but it's major. It's the way that you're going to get paid as a pharmacist. It's the way that our independent community pharmacies are going to be able to move forward. And there's a lot of changes coming, and I'm excited about them. I'm still nervous about what's happening. But before we get into that, I want to give a shout out to PrimeRx. Really appreciate the help today. They are helping us and sponsoring This Week in Pharmacy, and they have a interesting offering. PrimeRx market registration form is on your screen. If you're listening to the audio, just take a look at primerx.io. That's primerx.io. They are offering a $100 Amazon gift card. You're going to register as a PrimeRx market member for free Shop Smart and make purchases totaling $500 or more in generics by January 31st, 2025. And you're going to get a $100 Amazon gift card. And who doesn't want an Amazon gift card? Because I go to Amazon probably too much. And I look back on purchases from 2024, and I'd really like to know what the hell I was doing out there. It's just too easy. Makes it too easy to access products and services. But in this case with PrimeRx, this is a market leader. This is a technology vendor, but they're putting a market together. And inside that market, you're going to get additional benefits. Before we get into the news, I also want to talk about a special conference that Pharmacy Podcast Network has been invited to attend as press with Dr. Adam Robinson, one of the Pharmacy 50 most influential people in 2023. I love Adam. He's a special friend of mine. He's got an amazing heart. He's a good old Southern boy, and he has a pharmacy in Kentucky. He's a pharmacy owner. He is going to join forces with me, and we are going to cover the Atrium X conference. That's February 27th through March 1st. Do you remember the PDS team, Pharmacy Development Services, led by the brilliant and genius Dan Benamos? And from PDS has come so many rock stars in our industry, like they're disciples that have trekked their own tracks, and they've built their own businesses. And one of those amazing people, pharmacist, by the way, is Dr. Nicolette Matthey. And she is combining services with a bunch of organizations that are the innovators of our industry. Shout out to the Icon team. Shout out to RX Safe for being a huge sponsor. They're actually sponsoring the Pharmacy Podcast Network's press coverage of the Atrium X conference. And if you're driving in a car, you're not watching us on YouTube, don't worry about it. Just go to atrium24.io. Look at the conference section. Once again, that's atrium24.io. Go to the conference section. It says Atrium X. This is a conference of the very first type of conference. I've never heard of doing this before. The content of this conference is lightly prefaced, but guess what? It's the attendees that make the decision about how and what they'll be talking about. And the facilitators driving these conversations are no strangers to the pharmacy industry and no stranger to independent community pharmacy. We have Kelly Babcock, Terry Norvell, and Jen Deal. These people are rock stars. I can't wait for you to see this. And we're prefacing today. We're giving you a little sneak peek of the insights of Kelly and of Terry, because my partner in crime at this event, at the Atrium XRVET coverage, Dr. Adam Robinson, is bringing to TWIRx today, to This Week in Pharmacy, a deep discussion about the industry and about what's happening in pharmacy. And Kelly and Terry have an amazing conversation, a down-to-earth conversation with Adam. I can't wait for you to hear it. That is our feature today. That's what we're excited about. But before that, let's get into TWIRx news. TWIRx news. I got to have like a special, some special recording for TWIRx news because that didn't sound that great. I'm sure that you're jogging right now or you're driving. You're like, what the heck was that? But TWIRx news. Let's talk about the biggest news of the week, and that is the U.S. FTC finds major pharmacy benefit managers inflated drug prices for $7.3 billion. That's billion that's a B for billion gain. Now, in my humble opinion, without the powers of Greg Reibold or Antonio Chacha or drug channels, I think that's a low number. I really do. I think that 7.3 billion of our three major PBMs just sucking out all of the services and all of the pricing and all of the money out of our industry and closing pharmacies down and frustrating pharmacists out there who's passionate about patient care and don't have time to listen to patients and the patient's needs and communities. I think that the FTC is undershooting the 7.3 billion, but regardless, the information and data that they have before them, the FTC report accuses PBMs of making up drug prices significantly, making up drug prices, just making them up. That sounds like the PBMs to me. PBMs defend practices. They're shooting back to the FTC saying, hey, the suit is baseless, which is complete bullshit. And lawmakers aim to curb the PBM influence on drug costs. You know, the consumer has no idea. When the consumer stands at your counter and you say, hey, your copay is $25 or $5 or $10, or maybe it jumped up to $50, whatever it is, they don't understand. They're looking at the pharmacist. They're looking at the technician. They're getting upset because they think that the cost is associated with the pharmacist and the pharmacy that they're in, and it's not. It's all about the insurance. And what this is doing is it's demystifying our PBMs. It's demystifying what they've been hiding behind, which is this cloak and dagger, ninjas in the night, stealing money from the American people. Reuters actually covers this. That's the article I'm using, and it says the nation's three largest pharmacy benefit managers have significantly marked up the prices of certain medicines, including for heart disease, cancer, HIV, and their affiliated pharmacies, and the U.S. Federal Trade Commission said on Tuesday. And it goes into the United Health Group, Optum, CVS, CVS Caremark, Cigna, Express Scripts marked up prices at their pharmacies by hundreds of thousands of percent, netting them $7.3 billion in revenue in excess in acquisition cost of the drugs, the FTC said its second report on the industry. I can't wait to see what comes of this. A shout out to Representative Auchincloss, who's just been a powerhouse, and FTC Commander Khan. A shout out to the Pharmacists United for Truth and Transparency for all of their work. Shout out to NCPA, the National Community Pharmacists Association, as well as the state associations that have done so much work on digging into the truth. And the truth has never been forthright. It has never been given to us as a profession by any of the PBMs. They hide behind their algorithms and their lawyers and their lobbyists, and it's just horrible. So I can't wait till this breaks up. We need to see a law come out that there is no pharmacy, or I should say, there's no insurance company that should be able to own a pharmacy. That's a conflict of interest. It doesn't make any sense that it's even in place right now, but there is zero ownership of pharmacies if you're an insurance company, because you could just do whatever you want. And as we know, what's happened today and the situation that we're all in right now. All right, next bit of news is coming from Pharmacy Times, the granddaddy of all pharmacy news out there. Great organization. And they just came out with a new article. It says the evolving business model of pharmacy is moving beyond dispensing. This is great news. It's an amazing article, but we know this is not really news or anything really late per se. We've been talking about this for years and years and years. Why do pharmacists, why do our independent community pharmacies, why do they give away so many services of the deep pharmacological knowledge of what you know as medication experts? Why do you give so much of that knowledge away that physicians would bill for their services and their knowledge as a clinician and as a doctor, as a physician, as a primary care giver? But when you move to the pharmacy land, it's just give all of this knowledge away, and you get this tiny little dispensing fee, or worse yet, a negative reimbursement fee based on how the PBMs act. Today's article from Pharmacy Times, and basically evolving beyond the dispensing, it goes into pharmacies are evolving into healthcare hubs. We always said that pharmacists are the hub of healthcare on preventative care and chronic disease management due to declining dispensing revenue. Expanded services include medication therapy, immunizations, and telepharmacy, enhancing patient care and accessibility. And I'd like to put additional things into this article, if I could, in the way that you think as you're listening. Other cash-based businesses that bring tremendous value to your community. And each community is just slightly different. But I want you to think about something. The future of pharmacy, especially our independent community pharmacies, must be infused with business that isn't attached to insurance, because insurance keeps you hostage. It keeps our patients hostage, because now the insurance gets to say how a patient is cared for. It's a cookie cutter system. Everybody is supposed to fit in the exact same cart. They have to use the exact same processes. And guess what? They have to use the exact same compositions of the medications that are coming from the pharma manufacturers. Pharma manufacturers and their lobbyists can't stand the thought of too much customization, because then they can't stamp out a specific pill or tablet that's going to fit a specific patient, and or all patients for that matter, with that specific disease condition. And we know compounding. We know that pharmacists that are in their communities know their patients best, and the tweaking of medications and the tweaking of services and the tweaking of supplements and the combining of all of this, that needs to come to the front. That's how healthcare really evolves. It's the precision medicine, and it's dialing into what a patient truly needs for their specific needs. And I really like this article. It says pharmacies have long been the cornerstone of patient care, with dispensing medications as their primary focus. However, the healthcare landscape is rapidly evolving, and pharmacies are increasingly facing new challenges that threaten the traditional dispensing-centered models. The decline in revenue from dispensing services has led to a shift of the pharmacy's role in healthcare. As pharmacies begin to expand their services to meet these changing needs, they are uncovering new opportunities for revenue in patient care, also facing hurdles that must be addressed for successful adaptation. In this new paradigm, pharmacies are beginning to function as health hubs, focusing on preventative care, chronic disease management, and collaboration with other healthcare entities. And something I want you to think about, especially if you're a pharmacy owner, especially if you're in a hospital pharmacy, is the transition of care to the home. If you're an independent community pharmacy and you have an opportunity to build a home care business, can you imagine how that's going to position you 1 year, 3 years, 5 years into the future, where your community knows not only are you their pharmacy, they get your medications from you, they get the advice that you're giving as a clinician and as someone who really understands how medications affect them and other substances, as well as food for medicine. But now all of a sudden you get to move your services into the home. You get to connect services to their home that will be blood pressure cuffs and telehealth and measurements and data. And that combination, especially of that being a cash-based business, I see that as the future of pharmacy care, and being able to give a full portfolio of services to the people in your community. Last bit of news before we turn things over to Adam Robinson to interview two amazing speakers that are going to be at the Atrium X Conference 2024 is Walgreens. This comes from USA Today. It says Walgreens turnaround continues with 450 stores to be closed this year. Could a Walgreens near me be closing? Yes, it could. The major pharmacy chain is closing about 1,200 stores in the United States. Locations in Chicago and San Francisco are among the reported closings. And this just goes to show how the PBMs have just destroyed the pharmacy industry. It's 100%. All right, wait a second. That's an exaggeration. It's 97% the PBMs that has destroyed pharmacy. And it's just horrible to think that it was all about greed. It was all about profit. It had very little to do, if nothing to do, with patient care. And it's time to break that up. This article goes into the thinning of Walgreens locations has been in the works. Walgreens said in October 2024, it planned to close about 1,200 underperforming stores across the U.S. as a strategy to offset declining profits resulting from low drug reimbursements, rates, and sluggish retail sales. Let me say something crazy for a second. And if this is a shout out to, if you're a Walgreens pharmacist, think about what I'm about to say. Can you imagine if Walgreens went to the NCPA, the National Community Pharmacists Association, and said, hey, listen, NCPA, we don't have a dog in the PBM fight, really. We're not a PBM. They're a pharmacy. They're a community pharmacy outlet. Can you imagine if somebody at Walgreens strategy said, we're done with PBMs. We're not going to use any of the top 3 PBMs. We're going to use a collective initiative to go into communities, educate the communities and the community employers within those communities, and get some of these PBMs that are non-traditional, that are flat fee, that are fiduciary PBMs, and get them to use anybody but the top 3. And Walgreens starts rejecting contracts from Optum. They say to CVS Caremark, F off. We're not using your contracts. You suck. They say to United Health, we're not using anything to do with any of your PBMs, Express Scripts. Go away. Like, those are the tough moves that could have insulated the success and could insulate the success of the future of Walgreens. And it would be a tough punch in the face because it would be really hard to actually do that, I'm sure, but it's possible to do. So when Walgreens becomes a private company versus a publicly traded company, I hope that they're aggressive, and I hope they think, how can we insulate ourselves for the future of our business and maybe become a public company again someday by using different pharmacy insurance instead of the traditional 3 PBMs, and never allow them to come back into the fold. Block them out. Say, we don't take any insurance from any of the major insurers, and one by one you start going and educating. And I know that people are going to listen to this right now and say that's a pipe dream, it's impossible, it's not going to happen, but it's not. You have to start somewhere, and you have to start today. And you said, when are we going to start standing up and saying we're not taking it anymore from the PBMs? And that's the kind of major aggressive moves. You know, a shout out to Mark Cuban, who took ideas from other people and have created Mark Cuban Cost Plus Drugs, and it's all cash based, like Kyle McCormick out of Pittsburgh is doing, who's one of the original OGs that actually did cash based only. And imagine someone as powerful as Mark Cuban going to someone. I know he doesn't like Elon Musk. I know that they argue on Twitter all the time. I watch it and listen to it. I think it's funny. But imagine these two people coming together and saying, let's plop down a couple $2 billion and let's start a insurance organization that isn't traditional, works very flat fee-ish, and it's almost like a PBM, and you don't have to put Mark Cuban's name on it because I think there's a lot of ego that goes into that. But it's this PBM, it's this pharmacy benefit, because I know that pharmacy benefit managers are very important, but they could do all the administrative work like they did in yesteryears, like the 80s and 90s, when they weren't as greedy as they are today. And they come up with some kind of model to support the insurance side of things, but then they just They just shut out the 3 big PBMs. Is that possible? Yes, it's absolutely possible. And I think in 2025, you're going to see more and more creativity coming out of the pharmacy profession. And we have to if we're going to survive. Hey, I want to give a shout out to IPC for being such a powerful organization, the Independent Pharmacy Cooperative. They've been helping us for years. A shout out to them for all of their work. A shout out to Sykes and Company for being a great organization working with the Pharmacy Podcast Network. They will also be at the Atrium RX conference that's happening in February, and we're excited to be there. And like I said, you are about to hear a little snippet. It's an interview with Adam Robinson and 2 of the speakers that are going to be at Atrium RX. And I don't want to postpone this anymore. I want you guys to listen, and thank you for being a podcast listener. Thank you so much for listening to the Pharmacy Podcast Network's many podcasts that are out there. And it's a TWIRx day. It's time to TWIRx. Let's get into it.
2 of my favorite ladies in the whole wide world. So tell me what's been going on. How have you guys been doing? What are some really cool things that you have learned in the last couple of years that you feel like you need to be sharing with us for sure?
Well, wow, Adam, timing is perfect. I just completed previewing what is my newest favorite book, The Mindful Body. And I'm all about decision.
And not to interrupt you, that was something I was going to ask later, is what are some books that we need to be reading? Right. So there you go. Nice plug. Good job.
Yeah, there you go. I'm not even all the way through the book yet. And I typed up my highlights from chapter 4 on decision making, because we're doing a session next week for NCPA we're calling it, it's an on-site at their corporate, and they want to dive into decision making. And, we've done decision making as part of AOP and Leadership 3.0. And yet Kelly and I love staying fresh. We're nothing if not wanting to be as relevant as possible. And I've struggled with this decision making over the years. And so this is the freshest approach that I've come across. And it's just like all the burden about it's got to be the right decision, it's like that flies out the window. There is no one right decision waiting to be landed upon.
As pharmacists, and this being a pharmacy kind of led podcast, I've always said we're perfectionists, and perfectionists are the worst decision makers because we have the hardest time. But because, it's not going to be 100%, I don't want to make that decision. Right. And so that's why I felt for a long time I would just kind of kick the can, really, is what I was doing.
Yeah.
But it's very important to make a decision. And it doesn't have to be right, which I know that now. It doesn't have to be right. You just take that decision and then see where that leads you to. Okay, well, it didn't work. Right. So I'm sure that book sheds a ton of insight into that for sure.
Yeah, because it's all about that body-mind connection, right? So, and the neuroscience, which Kelly and I are passionate about, and, you get your mind clear and you're mindful about the decisions, and you realize there isn't just one, and uncertainty is normal. So you're going to gather just enough information, and then whatever decision you make that decision right. And you let go of regret. You let go of, gosh, just so excited to share the message with people, because life doesn't have to be stressful. It just, even the crazy economic time and the PBMs and all that everyone's dealing with.
Right.
Gosh, we put a lot of burden on ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Kelly. Go ahead, Kelly. I was just going to say something silly, but go ahead.
We love silly. We're good with that.
Look, we're interrupting each other. Will you just let me talk? No, hold on. You said the what if, right? Like everybody's about the what if, and I learned from you guys, and then I've learned also from therapy and reading books and everything else is there's the so what if, right? So what if you made a wrong decision? Is it really going to be as bad as we think it's going to be? And
Right.
Yeah. So, all right, Kelly, to you now. Sorry.
Yes, well, I mean, I'm just going to put an exclamation mark on the end of that sentence, because it really does go back to the neuroscience. One of the basic assumptions in neuro-linguistic programming, how we program the language that we use neurologically, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the basic assumptions is that there is always another choice. So that really, and what made me think of that, Terry, is when you said, we just burden ourselves unnecessarily, and how freeing and liberating it is if you're like, oh, well, wait a minute, there's always another choice. I'm going to make this decision, and then I'm going to make another one based on the outcome, either a desired outcome, a desired result, or not. Right.
Yeah, that's right.
That choice, to understand that, like, liberating is a great word. And it's a process for sure. I mean, there's pieces to it. Like I use, I was just telling you guys, I was on vacation. I was sitting on a beach, and I am not a sit on the beach kind of guy. Right. So my wife is reading 13 books on the beach and doesn't move. And the whole time I'm thinking, all right, I got to do something. And I had to sit there and I had to do, breathing techniques. I had to think of, okay, now let me think of myself differently in this position. Do I really need to be stressing out about emails? Do I really,
And yet so applicable, it actually came up on 2 coaching sessions with pharmacy folks that I had today. And that is that we are human beings. We're not called human doings for a reason.
That's right.
For a reason, because we feel more comfortable when we're doing something, right? We feel like there's a value associated with even the most minuscule productivity that we can be engaged in. And that's so not the way to go.
No, and I want to jump in and say, Adam, I so relate to what you were saying about, okay, I got to do this. It's like our mind is just that wild stallion. And I would use the word addicted to books and personal growth. And I really thought there's a destination, there's a point to arrive at. And it's like, damn it. There is no done. It's just like that onion concept, right? There's just another level of depth that we can get to in understanding ourselves and how to lead effectively with other people. And especially with the multi-generations going on, there's a lot to learn. Lot to learn.
Well, I think the onion idea, you can look at it in 2 different ways, but I love the onion idea that you have to start somewhere and you peel the first layer off. And the first layer helps you realize, oh, I needed that or whatever it was that helped in the process. Well, there's another layer. Well, what is this next layer? Okay, well, then maybe it's you're talking to someone and you find out about a generational issue that you had, or maybe your parents talked to you a certain way, or a teacher talked to you this way when you're 8 or 9 or 10. And maybe that's the mentality or the reason you have that mentality. Oh, well, that helped. And now I see that. Oh, there's another layer. Let's peel that layer back, right? Here's another tool. And it's not, I feel like in American society, it is bad. It is seen as bad if you're not doing something.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And there's so much pressure. I grew up in a generation that you can be anything you wanted to be. You had to put your nose down and you had to work hard and you can do anything you wanted. And now that I've achieved what I thought I wanted to do, okay, well, is that satisfying enough? No, I still feel that pressure. Like I got to do something else. I got to be more. I got to be more. I got to be more. And now you're leading. You're running a business. You're doing whatever it is, and now you have to use those tools to help your team succeed. Well, if you don't have the tools and you're succeeding yourself, how are you going to help your team succeed?
Exactly.
Right.
How are you going to do that?
Right. And I think a lot of people, when they go to leadership classes or, well, I'll learn these KPIs and I'll put this wheel on the board and we'll do all these things. And I'm a huge believer, and you guys can attest to this, that you got to know yourself first before you can start leading other people.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so much so, Adam, that we have a slide devoted to that, right?
Yeah.
Like leadership, a PowerPoint, leadership development really is an inside job. Leadership growth is an inside job. It starts with you first. And that's why we say that, there's never a finish line. We at some point, the word enough has to factor into our psyche, and that we are enough, and that we are enjoying and feeling the satisfaction and the gratification of the journey, right? Because we're just all simply practitioners.
Yeah.
We just get up and practice all over again every single day. It's the finish line is, as long as we're growing and learning and evolving,
That's
that's
it.
it. That's all there. That's all there is. It's enough. It's
enough.
Doesn't seem
Enough.
in our world enough, right?
Yeah, it's
You're constantly evolving.
counterintuitive.
Well, are you running with the Joneses? Are you doing what they're doing? What's the next new thing? Am I surviving? All this stuff. There's just so many things. And back to what you said earlier, sometimes you just don't have to do anything, and that's okay.
And that's okay.
Yeah, and which is why, we do so much work around the body of work of the saboteurs, the self-talk.
Right.
Like, what do we say to what you're talking about, Adam, is how we speak to ourselves. We judge ourselves. We're the one that's evaluating what's good enough, what's not good enough. We judge others. We compare ourselves. We judge the environment. It's just like, that's exhausting.
So exhausting.
Oh my gosh, what if you could just turn the volume down and breathe and just be present in the moment and deal with whatever is coming around and know you're enough. You've got the skills.
Well, and Terry and Adam, that also speaks directly to what you just said earlier, Adam, about if you cannot find it in yourself to be enough, how are you going to lead your team, right?
Yeah.
In other words, if you look, we're not dialing it in. There's no perfection here, right? We're talking about progress and practice. And so that vulnerability and transparency that you share with your team, like, I'm on a journey as well, and I'm not going to get it right every time.
Right.
Right. And what I can commit to you is showing up authentically. I'm going to just show up. I am going to be here with you, in service with you and for you, in service of our mission, our vision, and our values, our patient care, whatever that looks like. And there's no report card. At the end of the day, just know that I'm committed to showing up, and that I'm going to be the best version of myself that I can be. And that does require sort of peeling back those layers of the onion.
It's very important. I thought that as a man, I had no brothers or sisters. It was just mom and dad, and I was going to graduate, and I was going to be the poster child for our family and all this stuff, go be a pharmacist. And it was hard, and I didn't have the tools, and I was just thrown into this leadership. And as pharmacists, a lot of us we get out and everybody's like, oh, you have your doctorate, and welcome, now you're the manager now of a new store, or you're going to own your own store, or you're going to run this part of a hospital, or whatever it is. And we just assume that we have the training and we have the heart and the knowledge and everything to do this. And we realize quickly that we don't. So then we start beating ourselves up that we don't have that, because we've always sort of succeeded, right?
Right.
You can't necessarily be a pharmacist without succeeding to some degree.
Absolutely.
And that's hard. That's a difficult pill for a lot of people to swallow. And that's why, when I do consulting or talk to other people, and I always refer them, whether it's your guys' class, or if they have a therapist, or if it's books or something, they have to do the journey. You have to do the journey, and you have to be okay that there is a journey. That you're just not.
There's a couple steps in there. first you have to be aware
Yeah.
that there's another way. Like
Mhm.
somebody has to help open your eyes to, gosh, it doesn't have to be that hard.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Why am I
then
struggling?
they have
Why
to
am I
have
struggling?
that, yeah, A, and then B, be willing to go on that journey, have that growth mindset, not I succeeded so far and this is what got me to where I'm at. This is good enough.
Yeah.
Well,
And not all doom and gloom either, right?
No.
Like
no,
Right,
a lot of
right.
people have great success and great lives and everything's wonderful, but there are going to be roadblocks and you need to know how to handle those roadblocks. And if you have them and you have some tools in your tool bag and you're comfortable that vulnerability comes out, that's a big piece I think people really need to learn is vulnerability, and not just for a leader, as a person in your
Oh, it's-
marriage and everywhere. Yeah.
Absolutely. You know what that brings to mind? Really, what, Adam, if we shifted our perspectives and instead of seeing roadblocks, we saw transitions,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
How differently would we approach that? Seeing those obstacles as opportunities, right? Because we do know that it's all in how we see it. Our perspective shapes our reality.
Right.
And so understanding that if you're lucky enough to live and work in a meaningful way for a long life, you're going to have, right? You're going to have peaks and valleys. And one isn't more important or better or more, successful than the other. It all begins to meld into this beautiful tapestry that is
Yes.
who you are and the wisdom that you can bring to the body of work that you've
Mhm.
done in your life, right? And I think that's really what I see in particular when you are so focused on sort of the external pieces, right? Like the
Mhm.
external trappings, we might say, keeping up with the Joneses and
Yeah.
is, identifying success as simply a number in your bank account or, when all of those things are gone, who are you?
Right.
Right? When it's all said and done, you want to feel like I know who I am.
Mhm.
And there is nothing more powerful than that as a leader, because Terry's done an incredible amount of work around inner trust, and we all know that when you trust yourself, it outwardly manifests as confidence.
that's right.
Yes.
Well, people are not going to line up behind you and follow you into the fire if you are not confident,
Right. Oh,
right?
it's huge.
It's huge. It's just,
I'm reading a book right now while I was on the beach earlier, wondering what else I was going to do. I was reading a book and checking emails and had to do something, and it was talking about the guy started out, and in his journey, he realized he had to talk to elders, and it was a spiritual journey that he was going on, and he was like trying to figure out what he was doing and who he needed to talk to, and he's like, I need to talk to the oldest, wisest people that I knew. And, that sounds kind of, cliche and all that stuff, but the knowledge that he got was exactly kind of what you're saying is it's not always, how do I put this? It's not always as bad as we think it is, and it's not always as good as we think it is.
Exactly.
And
That's
it's a
right.
journey, right? And as we talk to someone, we always hear when you walk in and you have your kids and somebody's like, oh, appreciate it now, they're going to grow up quick. We don't realize until they grow up, man, that was quick.
That's so true.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so this leadership journey that I went on, and so many of my friends that I still talk to that were in class with you guys, it's looking back, not living in the past, but looking back and seeing how far you came. Right.
That's right.
If you would have told me 5 years ago where I am now compared to then, spiritually, personally, in a business, dealing with all the stuff in PBMs, whatever it is, I would have said you're crazy. I would never see that, right?
Right. Right.
And so it's just part of the journey, and the more you're able to accept that there is a journey and that
Mhm.
journey can change and there's tools and there's pieces and there's things you need to do. You got to go out and you got to learn. You got to go to your class. You got to read a book. It's going to make the journey so much better. So much better.
Yeah. And you know, Adam, I love what you're saying. And what pops into my mind is that no matter where you are on that journey, knowing that it's about growth, giving people the respect that they're doing the best they can based on what they currently know. Like back 5 years ago, you were a different human and you were doing the best you can based on what you knew at the time. And now you have, you know, that knowledge. We love that knowledge, you know, grows into wisdom. What you're speaking of is the wisdom of perspective, having walked that path.
Yeah, that was the word I was going to say, is perspective. It's all about perspective.
Well, and you think about, to Terry's point, 5 years ago, when you couldn't envision what you're doing now, that's just raw potential.
Yeah.
Right? It's the possibility. It's what's possible, and how to harness that. And so Adam, you had opportunities to make choices and decisions at many, many junctures over the last 5 years, right?
Oh, yeah.
So those decisions that you made have led you here to this point.
Right.
And that's the exciting part. It's the exciting freedom, and the word we used before, liberation of knowing that I can stay in choice and I'm never stuck.
Right.
That I don't have to sign on for suffering.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I was going to just backtrack a minute here, if it's okay with the two of you, because you've talked a lot about, you know, Terry and I and our class, and I want to just for listeners, I want to provide a little bit of context. Right?
I was going to get to that, but please, absolutely.
Well, if you would like to, why don't? Hey, give it a crack there, Adam. I'll embellish, and Terry will jump in when we.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. So the people that I didn't by happen chance just fall into doing a podcast, right? It was, I did this and I did that and I did this and it led to this person, and it was the journey. But it started when I attended your all's class. And when I attended your all's class years ago at PDS, and it was a 3-part, like over 3 months kind of thing.
Yes.
It was life-changing to actually sit there and listen to somebody believe with you. That's a big piece, is you guys believe with people.
Oh,
you help them see their potential. You help them see what's really true and what's really false. That's a huge piece of it. And it was life-changing for me. And then I attended your other class after that. So I was like, I'm all in. I love this stuff. So
and we love you, Adam.
Right. And so it changed me as a person, spiritually, and mentally, as a leader, everything. And you can ask my team. I sent my team to your all's class, all that kind of stuff. So that just led to those, when we were talking earlier, those layers of the onion. Oh, I need to read a book. Oh, here's something else, right? Well, Terry and Kelly do this, but I saw this. Let's try that. So it changed me as a person to start using the tools. And it's almost like a snowball effect, right? And so one thing led to another, and then here's this, and I did some I never would have thought I would do consulting. I never thought I would be standing up on stage in front of people speaking about something I do in a pharmacy, whatever. Workflow, they say, but it's more than that. I always talk about it's about your leadership and who you are and being vulnerable. And now you guys are doing, and Terry, you came in and spoke to us personally. We did a private thing here at the store, and you guys have been my coaches for a long time. So now you're doing leadership growth formula. Are you doing that twice a year? Is that when you're doing it? Yeah. Yeah.
We're actually, believe it or not, I'm picking Terry up from the airport tomorrow, by golly.
Yes.
We're our last and final session live program of 2024 is this Wednesday through Friday in Fort Lauderdale. And, you know, Adam, the thing that's really interesting is that the program that you talked about at PDS, Pharmacy Development Services, really was co-created. Terry and Sharon Raznick and I co-created that program in response, right?
Yes.
In response to an overwhelming desire on the part of independent pharmacy owners to become better leaders. When asked what is the single greatest challenge independent owners face, now we're talking, close to 14 years ago, right? Yep. The immediate response was leadership. Like, no question, just hands down, leadership is the greatest pain point. Fast forward. So of course, we went into action. We created an advanced leadership program for independent pharmacy owners and their teams. We created a next level program called Leadership 3.0. All precursors, right? All precursors to our leadership growth formula. And yet fast forward, here we are, 2024, and NCPA just conducted a survey.
Right. I was at Cardinal. You guys are doing NCPA stuff too. So I was going to get into that later too.
Well, guess what? Here we are 14 years later. And what do you think the number one pain point still is?
Leadership.
I mean, and that's why we call it a practice, because there's really no end in sight. We just get better and better at it. And the way we do that, the way we get better at it is understanding ourselves first, right? Like you mentioned, and perspective is a huge piece of everything. It drives everything. And so what we have done in our leadership growth formula, we've really focused on some of the neurosciences, right? Yeah. Positive intelligence, transitional intelligence, how to navigate through life from a more positive perspective than a negative perspective. And what are the underpinnings, right? And what voices do we tend to listen to and make decisions, base our decisions on, right? And so much of that leadership is about accountability and ownership for your own perspective, right? Like, I'm gonna live the life I've created. And that is sometimes it's a tough, Terry and I get pushback sometimes.
We do.
It's not me, it's all of them out there. And the external forces are creating this crisis in my life. It's a crisis if you believe it's a crisis. It's a crisis if you perceive it as a crisis. You have stress in your life if you perceive that it's negative stress. So it's really, to know that leadership is still the number one concern. It's why we've partnered with NCPA, because our mission is quite simple: to help you be a better leader.
Yeah.
That's
guaranteed. Like,
you know what I could add in there? It's like job security for Kelly and I.
Right. Maybe you all are not doing a good job teaching people to be leaders. And they have to keep
I wondered if you were going to pick up on that, Adam. This is like, damn.
It's that you're your own sabotage. You're sabotaging with your
have a new
saboteur.
approach. Yeah.
Right. No.
Well, and Adam, I want to say one more thing.
Yeah.
About you, and that is you're here because of your openness and your willingness to entertain the possibility of something new and different, to embrace the vulnerability of whatever risk that might entail. We only get this one life, right? We only get this one. And so thank you for being open and willing and growth oriented and vulnerable.
Yeah.
Adam,
let me jump in there.
Yeah.
Because when I came out to you all with your partners, there was a marked difference in your perspective, in your thirst for growth, in your thirst to shake it up and do things differently, and the vision of possibility that you held, that whether anybody was jumping on your vision or not, you were moving and grooving. That's just who you are. You are a master creator of your life, is what I see.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much. And you guys were a big part of that. I mean, it was a process for sure. And I needed in my life, I needed reaffirming and reassuring personally that I was doing things right.
Oh, yeah.
And that was just my journey from a kid to where I was then when I met you all, that I was self-sabotaging my own mind, right? That I wasn't good enough. I'm not going to be able to live up to these people. I'm not going to be able to do this. Am I, and that was just me personally. And I learned, like, I can do this, and I might fail, and it might be okay.
That's right.
And you know what? It might not be okay right now, but it'll be okay later. Like, it's, things happen. So the whole point of why I wanted you guys on here, and when we talked at Cardinal, and when I see you all out and about, and when I talk to people, is explaining and expressing to people how important it is to be vulnerable with your teams, your spouse, your coworkers, whatever it is. If you're not changing and you're not vulnerable, I don't personally believe you're growing. You're stagnant. Yeah. And you could be stagnant and still doing great. Like that, we're not saying that, right? Right. But there's something, it's almost addicting. Like you were saying earlier, it's addicting to evolve and to be a part of that evolution yourself. Right. Like, I know that I am the reason that I'm growing. I'm allowing other people to have influence on me. I'm allowing things. I'm being vulnerable with my team. I'm seeing them growing. And it's not, and for me personally, it's not even about me anymore. Like where I'm at personally, it's about everybody else. Right. Mm-hmm. So like, I'm leading my team to be better leaders themselves. I'm leading my pharmacists to maybe, hopefully one day they'll own a store. I'm leading my kids to do this. I'm leading men at my church to do this. And that's where I find my, my value now. And I did not have that 10 years ago when I met you guys at all. And so that journey, and all it was 4 classes and some books, right? So I can't thank you guys enough for that. That door.
Adam, 2 things about what you've just said. One, you've been on this journey long enough, you've evolved. And I have noticed over the last many, many years, that when managers develop themselves, they develop and they have that inner trust and the confidence, then they want to help others. It's not just about, systems and operations and protocols. It's like the joy comes from growing other people, from knowing you're making a difference with other people in their lives.
That's a human nature, right? I feel like that is our human nature, to want to help others, and everything else kind of gets in the way.
Yeah.
And we allow it to. And when you kind of see past that, and you know how to look over it, and look over what the world is telling you that you have to do and you have to be like and all that, you become a better person. And then what do you want to do as a human? You want to make everybody else better around you.
Right.
I feel like that was a huge change that I saw in that growth.
My second comment on your vulnerability, because we've gone there quite a bit. It's so important. And obviously, there are many, many, many other people who are interested. And Brene Brown, thank you so much, is who put that on the map. Mm-hmm. She championed how many 10, 15 years ago, the whole conversation about vulnerability, it didn't even exist. Mm-hmm. And what a gift that people are waking up and on that path.
Yeah, absolutely. What, Adam, what do you think has been the greatest shift since you've embraced this idea of vulnerability? It's okay to be vulnerable. What have you learned from that? I mean, what has shown up for you?
Well, you all didn't even know, but that was a great segue, because one of the things I want to do when I do a podcast, is ask you all questions to ask me. I don't want to be that guy that's just sitting on here podcasting and just asking you all about your awesome leadership growth formula program. Right? It's a conversation. We're having a conversation. So I saw, being vulnerable. And to me, being vulnerable is, I'm a guy, but I cry. Right. So I cry at movies, and I cry at church, and I cry when I'm upset. And when I was vulnerable for really the first time with my team, and that's really where this whole workflow and all that stuff really came from, I cried in front of them and expressed to them my desires for them to be happy. And what I saw was just this shift. I mean, it was instantaneous shift of it was like a next level friendship. Like there was a connection. That's the word I'm looking for. So that connection was there, and the connection can be broken, but it was such a strong connection that I never had with my team ever.
Wow.
Until I was vulnerable with them. Now, I had to be vulnerable with myself in the
Yes.
beginning, right? So that was the first step,
Mhm.
that I don't have it all together sometimes, and sometimes I'm doing stuff and it is the right thing to do. And I'm not as, I used to beat myself up all the time. I still do a little bit, but I'm not as bad as I thought I was, and all this stuff, right? So I had to be vulnerable with myself and allow myself to see who I really was. And then learning the different techniques and so forth from you guys, I expressed that. I was vulnerable with my wife. I was vulnerable. Well, the kids were tiny at the time, so they didn't even understand. But, now I'm vulnerable with them when I screw up, or, hey, mom and dad are having this issue over here, or whatever it is. But when I really was vulnerable with the team, it just exploded. And that's really where everything exploded from there, because Lisa heard about it, and heard about what I was doing, and that my team was on board. They weren't always doing everything right. I wasn't doing everything right. Me and Gabe, my business partner that you guys know very well, we weren't always on the same page. But because I was vulnerable, I was allowing myself to be critiqued. I was allowing myself to also give criticism. And I wasn't stuck in this bubble of how life should be, and just sitting around and beating myself up, listening to Saboteur and so forth. So that was the biggest thing, was that being vulnerable it formed that connection and catapulted me to where we are today. And I've got all these things going on. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm such a better person. I have so much, I have so many ideas that I can do to help myself in a situation. I have so many
Right.
tools I keep saying tools in my tool belt. Like
Right.
you just do, you just have these tools in your tool belt.
That's right.
So that was the big piece for sure, was the connection part.
And Adam, I didn't hear you use the word defensive, like your vulnerability and openness. You didn't get defensive. You didn't, like, the criticism, the feedback, the input, whatever word we want to use.
Mm-hmm.
You were just like, hey, I'm open.
I think sometimes I do get a little defensive, but I know that's not a good thing to have. Oh, why did I get defensive on that? All right, hold up. Now I'm vulnerable and going to apologize. Now I'm vulnerable and going to tell my teammates that I screwed up, right?
Mhm.
And when you tell your team, hey, we don't have it all together and I suck at what I'm doing, it changes instantaneously. The paradigm changes, and you have this connection with them where you can talk to them as a person, as a human being, instead of an employee.
Right.
or whoever it
Well,
is.
and it's authentic and it's
Yes.
real, right? It's real. It's transparent. It's all the things that a good, effective leader wants to have show up, right? And there's a connection here too, Adam, that I think it's an important one, that when you decide to step into, you have to choose fierce courage to step
Mhm.
into the vulnerability, right? And that's what, from a positive intelligence, right? From a PQ standpoint, that's you coming from your sage perspective, the you who is the wisest, truest, strongest, most positive version of yourself, right?
Right.
It's a superpower. It's a leadership
It is.
superpower when you can stand in front of people and come from that original, the
Right.
OG, that original place, that original you. Because everything else is just, clutter. When you can clear out the clutter and you can just bring it down. And it is a thing of beauty, and it's a seismic shift when it happens. You see it, you feel it, your team sees it and feels it. And when you have, this is what oftentimes I think pharmacy owners in particular overlook, is that when they are with you and you have that alignment equals acceleration.
Yes.
And I've said this time and time again, if you want better business results, you better have alignment.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to get there faster, quicker, with everybody on board, everyone performing at the highest level possible, you've got to have alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't be aligned with you if they don't know who you are.
That's right.
Right. Yeah.
That's right.
Another thing too about the vulnerable piece is you don't have to be at rock bottom to learn how to be vulnerable. I think that's what a lot of people think is like, well, here I'm going to try this. I'm at the bottom. I've tried everything else. It's almost like last resort sometimes.
Well, we like to have some mythbusters, and thank you for raising that, because Terry and I are we're big on busting through some of the myths around vulnerability, and that's one of them. Oversharing inappropriately is not vulnerability.
Right. Yes. My daughter loves to overshare everything because she's a nervous wreck talking to people. And I'm like, stop. That's not you don't have to do that. Right. But there are a ton of myths in a lot of that for sure.
Well, and the biggest one is that we can outmaneuver it, right? That we can live our lives without vulnerability. And that's laughable, because anybody who gets in a car and backs that car out of their driveway is vulnerable.
It's vulnerable.
Yes.
I mean, it's like, wait a minute, joke's on you, my friend, because we all live in a state of vulnerability to begin with. So now let's talk about the degrees of vulnerability and how you choose to use it, right? You're using it in service of something meaningful and something positive and good.
Yeah. Man, so much stuff we could unpack. So much stuff we can unpack. Yeah.
We just skimmed the surface, haven't we?
I know,
yes,
right?
ma'am.
So leadership growth formula, you got your last in-person for the year coming up, and then you guys are going to have more in-persons next year, right?
Well.
Oh, okay. Now tell us what you're doing next year.
That is TBD, our focus for next year. We have rolled out our first couple betas of our on-demand.
Oh,
so
look at you all, high tech.
We're taking our content and breaking it down into chunks. Our first rollout is the core, the essential leadership skills that you just have to have in 5 simple lessons. Each lesson is 30 minutes, and it's broken up into 5-minute, chunks. So they're really digestible. And the response that we've been getting from just that first session is pretty phenomenal, such that, we're going into a visioning process to see how do we want to continue to get the message out, because Adam, you said it was over 3 months when we did the first go round. Now we're down to 2.5 days, and some people it's still not reachable, and Kelly and I are committed to building better leaders, and we got to meet people where they are in a format that they want.
Yes.
And they want their team members to have the same message, and everybody can't come.
That's right. Well,
the teammate piece was a big part of it, was sending my team.
I mean, honestly, Adam, to Terry's point, it's that shared experience that the team can have. And they have that frame of reference and that point of reference. And you also mentioned NCPA. We are really focusing in 2025 on our strategic partnerships and the on-demand. It's a hybrid model, right? Where it's on demand, and then we can add in the virtual element live, so that there is that dynamic level of engagement. It's certainly not the same thing as being there live and in person. And yet, listen, we're not beyond taking our stuff to the tech realm. I mean, mean, this is,
Right.
this is the world we live in. And Terry and I both have realized that there's not as much of an appetite for people to get on a plane and travel and be out of their environments and be out of their businesses. Certainly we learned that, post-COVID. And that's why we really condensed our program and made it very immersive. 2.5 days, you're in, you're out. We're not saying we're never going to do it again because, we love that. It's our passion and what it really energizes us. And yet we also know that there is a broader audience that needs and wants this information. How do we get it to them in a manner that is that adheres to adult learning principle, where they can, to Terry's point, where it's digestible, it's bite size, and it's meaningful. That's the key, right? So
awesome.
Stay tuned on that, because we're, hey, this is the time of year where everybody's doing, strategic planning for the next year. So we're no different. We're right in the mix.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome, because you're going to be able to reach so many more people.
That's
because
exactly
it's
right.
a lot to say, hey, I'm going to take off for the weekend and fly to Florida or Colorado, wherever you guys have it, and do this. It's a lot. But man, if I could do it here now, I will suggest to people that they still need to somehow get in somewhere with you all and see it, because when you make that commitment, it's a commitment. That's a big piece, right? To have that commitment part.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The immersive experience is unparalleled.
Yeah.
And
you meet
also
people that you in that class that I still have. I mean, I will share real quick the one we did in Denver where you had us go and feed each other. I mean, I still see JR and we still pretend we're feeding each other all the time.
You and who?
JR, me and him still see each other and pretend we're, but
it's actually called the trust lunch. Let's make it a little bit
Yeah.
formal.
Okay. Well, I didn't want to lead too much. Y'all still might use that, but
that
was awesome. That was awesome.
And you know what, Adam, I'll add this: when we have done our master class, the on-demand with teams, we're able to create what Kelly loves to call digital intimacy. And everyone is on screen, and we go around, and it's camaraderie building, and the vulnerability that people are willing to go to with their coworkers. It gives me goosebumps.
That's awesome.
So we've figured out a little bit of that secret sauce.
Yeah.
That if we can't be in person, we're going to do the next best thing, and you're going to feel like you're with us.
Right. That's awesome. That makes sense.
Said, Terry. That's so beautifully said. Thank you.
Yeah. So, all right, couple books. We said Brene and all that. What are some books that you guys recommend?
Yeah.
Easy ones.
Easy ones. Well, if you haven't, a couple that I think are really tactical oriented. If you haven't read Atomic Habits by James Clear, that's one I would definitely put up there. Certainly we go back to 2019. Marcus Buckingham published a book called The 9 Lies About Work. That's another one that'll help you to sort of shift your thinking.
Kelly, that's where my brain went. That's still on the top of my list. I refer people to that book. It's a perspective shifting.
Yeah, all the time. And of course, my gosh, we could go on and on.
There's a ton of them that we could use for sure. Okay, well, ladies, thank you all so much. I mean, and I hope that everybody, when they're listening to this, they hear how life-changing that these ladies helped me figure out, and I want to share that, with everybody else, what they are doing that will not only help you as a pharmacist, a pharmacy industry person, some kind of professional, but as personally in your marriage, in your spiritual walk, and whatever that is, with your kids, with your friends, just learning how to be a good leader is life-changing. So I can't thank you guys, you ladies, enough for that. And thank you so much for being on the show. I'm excited to get this out. This is one of my first ones that I'm really doing. So
Thank
and
you.
I picked you all. What about that?
Thank
right?
you.
Oh my goodness. We are so honored and so thrilled, Adam. Thank
well, thank
you for having us.
Yeah. So where can they find, what's the website that you guys have?
Yes, indeed. It is leadershipgrowthformula.com.
And then you got all the
Leadership
socials and all that stuff on there.
All the socials,
Oh.
Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and our emails are just our first names, Terry, Terri at leadershipgrowthformula.com and Kelly, Kelley at leadershipgrowthformula.com. We're
Awesome.
easy to find. Yeah, you can find us on any of the social platforms. We also, one last quick little plug that when you go to our website, you're going to find a really cool new ebook that we just released around changing your relationship with time. So if you feel like you've been defeated lately by the calendar and the clock, then you definitely want to check out this ebook.
Time
Yeah,
is
it's
a
a
whole
it is
nother podcast.
A pithy
know.
Time
title.
management. Oh,
Pithy title, Make Friends with Time.
oh, I like it. Man, me and time, we go around and around sometimes.
I know. I
Yeah.
know. It's why it's there. It's why we wrote it, right?
That's right. Well, ladies, I can't thank you enough. I cannot wait to have you guys back on. And then as soon as this is out, I'm sure people are going to be signing up. So
Thank you, Adam.
all
Thank
right.
you, Adam.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.